For 9 seasons, from 1974 to 1983, Little House on the Prairie was more than just a TV show, it was part of the family. It brought the struggles and simple values of the Ingalls family into millions of homes every single week. At the heart of it all was the partnership of Charles and Caroline Ingalls, known to the world simply as Pa and Ma. Their relationship on screen became the gold standard for a television couple, built on respect, love, and unwavering support. He was the hard-working, principled father, she was the gentle, resilient mother, the steady hand guiding their family through every hardship and joy. Together, they felt like the ideal American family, and audiences cherished them for it. The chemistry between Michael Landon and Karen Grassle was so real, so believable, it anchored the entire show. But as it so often goes in Hollywood, the perfect picture on screen was hiding a much more complicated, and at times, deeply painful reality. For decades, the actress who played America's favorite mom kept a secret that would challenge everything fans thought they knew about the show and its star. They were the heart of America's most beloved TV family. Charles and Caroline Ingalls, a symbol of integrity, love, and strength on Little House on the Prairie. But for actress Karen Grassle, the reality behind the cameras was anything but perfect. For years, she stayed silent about the shocking and humiliating treatment she says she endured from the very man who played her husband, Michael Landon. Now, at 82, she's finally sharing the dark truth behind the show that millions adored. It's a truth detailed in her candid memoir, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, that reveals the deep cracks in the wholesome image of Walnut Grove. When Little House on the Prairie hit the airwaves in 1974, it was an immediate sensation. In an age of gritty cop dramas and cynical comedies, the show was a return to traditional values, a look back at a simpler time. And at the center of it all was Michael Landon. Already a huge star from his 14 years on Bonanza, Landon wasn't just the main actor, he was the driving force behind the whole production. He was an executive producer, a frequent writer, and directed more episodes than anyone else. In every way, he was the pa of the entire Little House operation. When it came to casting his on-screen wife, Caroline, he picked Karen Grassle, a talented, classically trained theater actress. Grassle wasn't a TV regular, she'd built her career on the stages of London and New York. In an interview, she remembered her first interactions with Landon, calling him extremely kind and sensitive. She said he was a good director who gave her the room she needed to get used to the fast pace of television, which was a whole new world for her. By all accounts, their working relationship started off fantastically. That early kindness translated into on-screen chemistry that felt like pure magic. As Charles and Caroline, Landon and Grassle were completely believable. Their gentle affection, their knowing glances, their united front against blizzards and illness, it all felt real because, in those early days, the respect behind the camera was real. The audience fell in love with them because they so clearly seemed to be in love with each other. The show's ratings exploded. It became a top 10 hit, a weekly ritual for families across the country. Karen Grassle, who had been a struggling stage actress so broke she'd thought about leaving the business entirely, was now the co-star of one of TV's biggest shows. She was America's Ma, a symbol of warmth and quiet strength. From the outside, it was a dream come true. The pilot was a hit, the first season was a smash, and the Ingalls family had captured the nation's heart. It seemed like Karen Grassle had finally found her place. But that clear prairie morning wasn't going to last. The harmony on screen was about to be broken by the cold reality of Hollywood business. After the smash hit first season, everything changed. It was time for contract renegotiations, and for Karen Grassle, it should have been straightforward. She was the co-star of a wildly popular show, and she naturally expected her pay to reflect that. As she said later, "I didn't want to gouge anybody, but I expected a fair wage." It was a reasonable, professional request for what she was contributing, but the kindness she'd known from Michael Landon was gone. She was met with a brick wall, not from some faceless network executive, but from her co-star himself. Landon, using his power as executive producer, took a hard line. He flat-out refused her request for a raise. According to Grassle, Landon's reason was a direct hit to her professional pride. She wrote in her book that he told her the network had run audience tests and that her character, Ma Ingalls, was not the favorite. He argued her pay should be closer to what the child actors were making. It was a deeply insulting move, meant to make her feel small and question her own value to the show. For an actress pouring her soul into being the family's emotional center, being told she wasn't popular enough for a raise was a slap in the face. Grassle was floored. She felt insulted, not just as an actor, but as his partner on screen. This wasn't business anymore, it was personal. The man who played her loving, supportive husband was now, off-screen, the boss who was actively trying to deny her fair pay. The warmth between them vanished, replaced by a tense chill. As Grassle stood her ground, refusing to back down, the entire atmosphere on set changed. The kind director she knew became cold and distant. The fight for a fair wage had turned into a battle for respect, a battle that would cast a long, dark shadow over the sunny fields of Walnut Grove. That salary dispute was the trigger. Once Karen Grassle stood up for herself, the kind colleague she knew seemed to disappear. In his place was a boss who, she says, started to make her work life miserable. The friction wasn't just one big fight. It was a series of actions that left her feeling marginalized and humiliated in front of the cast and crew. The first thing she noticed was in the scripts. As she kept fighting for a fair contract, her character, Caroline Ingalls, began to shrink. In her memoir, she calls Ma the incredible shrinking woman. Her scenes got smaller, her storylines faded, and the matriarch of the family was pushed to the side. The message felt loud and clear: if she was going to demand more money, her importance to the show would be cut down. It was the exact opposite of the Ingalls family philosophy, where Ma's voice was essential. But on set, Grassle's voice was being silenced, one page at a time. The mistreatment also got painfully personal. She said Landon would give her the cold shoulder and talk down to her, creating a tension that was obvious to everyone. She felt bullied. But the worst of it, she says, happened while filming their most intimate scenes. As Charles and Caroline, they often had scenes in the bedroom, talking over the day's troubles. These were supposed to be moments of deep affection. But according to Grassle, Landon would use these moments to tell crude, filthy jokes right before the director yelled, "Action." In her book, she wrote that Landon would use vulgar language and make gross jokes about how a woman smelled after sex. She would be lying in that little bed on set, with the crew of mostly men standing around, as Landon made these comments. The men would laugh, but Grassle felt trapped and horrified. In an interview, she explained her reaction: "I was raised to be a good girl, you know. Rise above. Look the other way. Don't react. And I just sat there frozen. Just frozen." She felt like she couldn't say a word. This was the 1970s, and as she later pointed out, the term sexual harassment wasn't even really a thing yet. She was a woman in a man's world, and her boss, the biggest star on set, was the one making the jokes. Speaking up could have been career suicide. So, she said nothing, putting on a professional face while feeling deeply humiliated. She said she just wanted to disappear. This created a painful split in her mind. On camera, she had to act like a woman deeply in love, sharing a tender moment. Off camera, just seconds before, she had been forced to listen to demeaning comments from that very same man. The emotional toll must have been immense. The perfect image of Pa and Ma Ingalls was a carefully built fiction, and for Karen Grassle, creating it had become a private, daily struggle against disrespect. The story of what really happened on this classic show is a powerful reminder that what we see on screen often hides a more difficult truth. If you're finding this look into the untold story of Little House on the Prairie as compelling as we do, take a second to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. Your support is what helps us bring you more of these stories, exploring the reality behind the Hollywood legends. Now, let's get back to Karen Grassle's journey and how this painful chapter affected the rest of her life. The constant stress and humiliation on set took a huge toll on Karen Grassle, not just at work, but in her personal life. The feeling of being isolated and devalued started to bleed into her life off-screen, making a private struggle she'd been dealing with for years even worse: alcoholism. In her book, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, she's brutally honest about her battle with addiction. Alcoholism ran in her family, and the pressures of her career, now mixed with the toxic environment on the Little House set, made it harder and harder to cope. She described herself as a high-functioning alcoholic. She would show up to work, sometimes with a brutal hangover, pull herself together, and give the performance everyone expected. She was a total pro on set. But the moment the director yelled, "That's a wrap," she would head for a drink. The alcohol was a way to numb the pain and quiet the feelings of hurt and frustration. She remembered nights of getting horribly drunk, just sobbing and feeling like her whole life was wrong. The joy of landing her dream role was being poisoned by the reality of her workplace. The conflict with Landon was a huge part of it. The ongoing fight over her salary, which she did eventually win, and the bullying that followed created a constant state of anxiety. It's hard to fathom the strength it took to play America's most wholesome mother while fighting personal demons and enduring mistreatment at work. For years, she kept her pain a secret. She knew how much the show meant to people and didn't want to ruin their perfect image of the Ingalls family, but in 1977, with a friend's help, Grassle made the life-changing choice to get sober. It was a turning point that took incredible courage and started a long road to healing. Sobriety allowed her to finally start processing the years of emotional pain and get her sense of self-worth back. She had to find the same kind of strength and resilience she showed as Caroline Ingalls to pull herself through this dark time in her own life. For years, the relationship between Karen Grassle and Michael Landon stayed broken. But time, and the clarity that comes with it, eventually allowed for one last, meaningful chapter in their story. Years after the show ended, and not long before Michael Landon's tragic death from pancreatic cancer in 1991 at just 54, they reconciled. Grassle shared the story in an interview. She wrote Landon a letter, just to say hello and let him know how she was doing. He responded with a warm and inviting note, suggesting she call him so they could discuss the old times before we forget them. So she called him. The conversation wasn't about old fights or past hurts. Instead, it was friendly and forgiving. They talked about their families and reminisced about the people they used to work with. For Grassle, that final call meant everything. She has said over and over how grateful she is that they mended our fences. She felt there was forgiveness on both sides, and it brought her a sense of peace and closure before he passed away. This final chapter really speaks to how complex their relationship, and Michael Landon himself, truly was. He wasn't just a simple villain. Many other cast members, like Allison Arngrim who played Nellie Olson, saw him in a complicated light. Arngrim called him brilliant and said he could switch from being a Ferrari-driving, cigarette-smoking Hollywood star into wholesome Pa Ingalls in an instant. She also acknowledged his wonderfully twisted, warped sense of humor. He was a larger-than-life figure, but still deeply human. Landon was carrying the weight of the entire show on his shoulders as its star, producer, writer, and director, a pressure that no doubt played a role in his behavior. Landon's own childhood was deeply troubled, and his on-set affair with a much younger stand-in also caused turmoil for the cast. He was a man of deep contradictions, a creator of heartwarming family television who could be incredibly difficult, and a beloved father figure to millions who caused real pain to his on-screen wife. Karen Grassle's decision to finally tell her story, in her own words, isn't about tearing down an icon or ruining a beloved show. It's about taking her own story back. With her book, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, she finally gave a voice to the difficult experience she endured in silence for decades. Her story gives us a crucial, and long-missing, look at the reality behind one of television's most cherished shows. It's a powerful story about what happens when power is out of balance. Grassle's fight was for something basic: fair pay and a respectful place to work. The pushback she got, being sidelined, humiliated with crude jokes, was a result of her daring to challenge a powerful man in a time before movements like #MeToo gave women the language and support to call out that kind of behavior. And yet, her story is also one of amazing resilience. She found the strength to get sober, to heal, and, ultimately, to forgive. The fact that she and Michael Landon were able to reconcile before he died adds a layer of grace to the whole saga. It allows us to see Landon as a more complete person, to acknowledge his incredible talent and his personal demons, without making excuses for the pain he caused. The legacy of Little House on the Prairie is still safe. The show's message of family, integrity, and perseverance means as much now as it ever did. But Karen Grassle's story makes that legacy richer. It adds a layer of truth that is both difficult and inspiring. It reminds us that Caroline Ingalls, the quiet, resilient heart of the family, was played by a woman of even greater strength. A woman who fought her own silent battles off camera and has now, with courage and grace, finally told her side of the story.